It is a 6.
A 6. Tom, the question we're going to be discussing this week is, how do you store and care for your game books? How do you use them at the game table?
Oh, wow. Well, if you were using the video here, you would see that there's a shelf behind me. So that's how I store them. One of my babies, I showed this to another podcaster, and I think he's still recovering and may need some therapy after I showed it to him. But this is the gem of my collection, and it's not even the D&D book. It's the Delta Green Countdown in mint condition.
Beautiful.
Oh, wow. Andy, you played that.
Right? I have, and if I were a smarter person, I would have bought a copy in the 90s, now that they go for like $1 trillion on eBay. But I'm not a very smart person.
All right. Let's back up just 1 second here and introduce us. Yeah, so I'm Chris Salzman.
And I'm Andy Rao.
Yeah, and this week we're joined by Tom Knauss.
Well, Tom, thanks for joining us.
No problem.
So Tom, we got wind of you. Your publisher actually contacted us to see if you wanted to come on the show because you're in the midst of a Kickstarter right now for the Tehuatl supplement.
That's correct.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Tehuatl is an expansion to our campaign setting for the World of the Lost Lands. It consists of 2 books, actually. The first book is Tehuatl, which is the campaign setting book. It is your gazetteer, your guide to this particular island, which is in the southern continent of our Lost Lands world. It includes an overview of the island, it includes the history, includes the people, details equipment, it provides the faiths and traditions of the entire island, and that is the main book, along with an appendix of various interesting facts about the island. The second book is actually called Adventures in Tehuatl. It has 3 adventures in it, one written by me, one written by my friend Rob Manning, who's done work for Wright Publishing and some work for Frog God Games, and the other is written by Tim Hitchcock, if you're familiar with Paizo and Pathfinder. It should be a name you know very well. Good friend of mine for a long time, and finally got a chance to work together, so it was awesome. We also have a couple add-on adventures as well. They're going to be called Maze and Monsters, M-A-I-Z-E, a little bit of a play on the old Tom Hanks movie of the Satanic Panic of the 80s. And an homage to the old C1, which is going to be Hidden Shrine of Knauss, which is kind of my name thrown up together in Nahual. Also going to have a system-specific guidebook for 5e, Pathfinder, and Swords and Wizardry that will let you play class options that are designed for the setting, as well as magic items, equipment, and spells for the setting. So we're really excited about it. We did a lot of research, and it is a fictional work. This is not role-playing in 16th century Mexico. It's in a fictional setting, but it is very inspired by the Aztecs. So we did a lot of research to make sure we got a lot of things right in doing this.
That's super cool. So how long have you been working on this then? It sounds extremely extensive.
Research and write time, about 1.5 years.
Okay.
At the time of this recording, at least, that you've blown past the Kickstarter's main goal and are well into stretch goals. Is that correct?
That is correct. We funded in 7 hours.
Nice.
We hit our first stretch goal in probably 20. We hit a second one, I believe, today or early this morning, and hopefully we'll hit another one tomorrow, and then we'll add another adventure to the Adventure in Tehuatl book, bringing it up to 4 adventures in total.
Are there any stretch goals in particular that you're really personally hoping that you hit, just for your own reasons?
Yeah, definitely. We want to get that second Tim Hitchcock adventure in this book. Daughter of the Drowned Serpent. If you're familiar with him as a writer for Paizo, he did the Kingmaker, which is a big early Paizo adventure path. Everyone, when I bring him on the show, they'll say, "Oh my God, I love Kingmaker so much," and they're redoing Kingmaker. So it's really worth trying to get that second adventure by Tim in the book. That would be awesome if we can do that.
Yeah, that's great. Kingmaker is one of those, if you pick up one adventure path, that's usually one of the top ones people recommend, at least in my experience. So how did you decide that now was the right time to do this particular setting?
How this all came about really was the fact that I've been working for Frog God Games, for about 8 years. And I was kind of always the guy who got, volunteered for doing that job that no one really wanted. So it's like, we really want to do this, but nobody, feels comfortable doing this. Will you do it? And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So I did all the Perilous Vistas books, which were environmentally focused Pathfinder products, and which are very crunch heavy. So I did those. And then it was like, I was supposed to do something else. It's like, oh my God, we need someone to fill in on doing the World of the Lost Lands for 60, 70,000 words. Like, pronto, can you do it? I'm like, okay. So I do that, and then they came to me actually and said, "What do you want to do? Because you've done it.
Nice.
We've asked. Now here's your big chance to do something you want." And this was what I wanted to do. I really wanted to bring this culture to life. I really wanted to create a campaign edition that would celebrate it and make people more aware of it, because it's very unfortunate. We were talking beforehand that you're a history buff. And, the fact that they disappeared so quickly from civilization that within 2 years, the empire basically collapsed entirely and almost disappeared almost shortly thereafter. And we really think that it's really, obviously it's tragic, but it's something that we wanted to really make the people aware of and give them something different to do. We're so accustomed to doing the same, kind of Eurocentric products, a Viking setting, feudal Britain or feudal, France or Spain or whatever, and there's so few that do this type of civilization and culture, and we really wanted to be the ones who, do the groundbreaking work here. I like to do things that are different. I don't like doing the same stuff. Otherwise I wouldn't have been the one who did the Perilous Vistas books or, did some other kind of niche products, and we thought that this was something that people would want, that they're interested in it, but there's never been a product that's really grabbed them and caught their attention. This one did. So
obviously has some personal interest for you. Have you had the idea of writing a setting like this for a long time, and this was just the right opportunity to do it then?
All the stars kind of aligned for this, because it was something I've wanted to do, but I wasn't in the position to say either self-finance it and do it myself. Or B, someone really, really wanted it. So when I had the opportunity to do it, I jumped at it, and everything worked out.
So you were talking about how it would be fantastic to see some settings and adventuring contexts that are different than sort of the really familiar medieval Europe stuff. Can you give us like a little pitch of like, what does the adventuring life look like in this setting? And how is it different from party of adventurers blundering their way through, medieval Germany type settings?
A couple things. One is, this is a less dungeon oriented setting. It is a wetland by and large. Like just like 16th century Mexico was. That's why Tenochtitlan was built in a dried lake bed. So we try and focus a little more on the wilderness, so there are adventuring opportunities outdoors. Also, we had to make some really important decisions when we came up with this concept. What do we want to do in terms of technological advancements, as opposed to, 16th century Mesoamerica? Do we want to introduce gunpowder? Do we want to introduce steel? What do we want to introduce? And one of the things we felt strongly about was not introducing horses.
Interesting.
Yeah, we felt that horses kind of like detracted from it because they didn't exist at the time in Mesoamerica. So we felt, well, adding the horse makes a couple problems. One is the island's not that big. Water travel is still very viable, and even overland travel is still very viable, because you're only talking about, I don't want to say only, but you're talking about a island roughly the size of a Midwestern state, which it's large for us thinking that way, but in terms of the Lost Lands campaign setting, it's like almost like a tiny speck on the map. We felt that introducing horses would really kind of detract from it, and it wouldn't feel right. Other things, we thought of that we thought would advance it would be, granted, the ancient Aztecs didn't have warships, but in this version they do, because they're an island nation. They trade with other communities and other islands, and they defend themselves. So it made sense for them to have warships. Plus, this is also a fantasy setting, so they're in contact with other peoples, elves, dwarves, halflings, who could introduce this technology or they could get some of the technology and improve upon it. And in some respects, that's what they did as well. If you're not familiar, the ancient Mesoamericans had rubber. It wasn't the rubber we know of today. It was a very flexible material, but it wasn't like it is now. But in this version, we actually had a little bit of an advancement where they discovered how to vulcanize it to some extent. We introduced that as well. So we wanted to make sure that we presented the people who are known as the Asleys as a sophisticated, advanced civilization with a lot of technological achievements and cultural advancements as well, to present them in that light, rather than being kind of like, I don't want to say backward, but less technologically or less sophisticated in that respect.
Is there anything that you learned in your research that like just really grabbed you, that's just like a fascinating fact that everybody should know about the Aztecs?
Yeah, they actually were one of the first societies that implemented compulsory education. So
really,
yeah, you went to school from an early age. So from roughly the age of like 7 or 8, you would attend school. Now, it depended upon your social status, what type of school you attended. It also depended upon whether you're a boy or girl. So girls went to a school that was more geared towards maintaining the household and doing those sorts of things, whereas boys went to a school that was more military centered, where you got military training, but you also got training in other disciplines. You might get math, science, history, religion, those type of things. Yeah, so it was a very sophisticated education system that they had.
Did that make its way into the setting?
Absolutely. The first adventure is actually set in a school.
Oh,
yeah.
So I think you just sold me on this, by the way.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff you were just saying, in the last couple of years, I feel like there's been a growing discussion about presenting non-Western European settings and cultures in a way that's respectful and authentic, and it doesn't exoticize them or fall back on stereotypes. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached that challenge as you wrote this?
Yeah, we actually have a bibliography for this book of a lot of the sources that we relied upon. Some were video, so there's some good documentaries on the Aztecs. There's also some good books, obviously, that we researched. We also brought in a sensitivity reader who has a background in anthropology and also from South America, who looked at the text and said, there are a few things he said, you should do this, you should do that. Fortunately, nothing like glaring, like, oh my God, I can't believe you did this, which was good. But, a few things that we kind of like, didn't think about, like, oh yeah, I kind of get that, because we're not like thinking of it, in those terms. So, those are the steps we really took to make sure that we did this properly. I'll speak for myself, and I'll speak for the other members of the writers, myself, Rob Manning, and Tim Hitchcock, is we wanted to make sure we were respectful of this, and we really admired these people. There's no mentions of, there's no conquistadors, and other people have asked us about that. Oh, so what point do you introduce the conquistadors? There are no conquistadors. I had zero intention of introducing that element to this. We wanted to celebrate these people and not, that portion of history. So, so we felt that taking those precautions and looking at it, trying to look at things through a different set of eyes is challenging. And that's why we did need some outside consultation to help us with that. And also remaining true to the sources as best we could, but also remembering that this is fictional. We're not trying to do this as a historical recreation. It's more of to be inspired by the people of Central America and Mesoamerica than to be simply a carbon copy of it. That afforded us a little leeway, but we still had to, again, walk that line to make sure we were respectful and our hearts were in the right places for this.
Yeah, it's fantastic to hear that. I'm really glad. You've obviously given a lot of thought and reflection, so it's great to hear. Yeah. I have a very trivial question compared to that very serious question. And that is, on the video for the Kickstarter introducing it, there is some great art, by the way, and one of those pieces of art shows what looks to me like a wizard like throwing a piece of flaming corn. Can you tell me what's going on in that picture?
All right, we all call that Maze Girl. Nice. And the intent was she is a wizard, a sorceress, and she has a spell where she can light it on fire and it actually will explode when it hits its target. We couldn't do all of those special effects in the art piece, so we felt that just letting your imagination do the work and figure out what exactly this will do would be cool enough.
I mean, the answer is like a 10-foot radius burst of popcorn, right?
Pretty much. Yeah, you could
right.
think that, So, we thought that was one of those things that was kind of cool about this. And everyone who's seen that piece of art is like, oh, it's one of my favorites, was Mace Girl. Because they thought it was an interesting take on, being the, again, not just empowering the indigenous peoples, but also having, a female sorcerer doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Find, like, when you were, writing spells like that or coming up with character concepts like that, did you find that it was pretty easy to adapt the D&D Pathfinder swords and wizardry rules to fit the setting? Because D&D and its various iterations come with a pretty strong set of assumptions about like how magic works and how combat works and that sort of thing. Did you find that it was a challenge or not too bad to make this fit to WoW?
It was actually easier than I thought. Because the reason is we were able to draw a lot of different inspirations than what has usually been done. So we were able to pull out, like, for instance, we took ordinary items that would appear in like, for instance, an Aztec pantry, and we made them into magical items. So, for instance, there's like magical pumpkin seeds, which were here in the New World, and we said, okay, they do this, 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 and this. So we were also able to take different military traditions and also different outlooks and perspectives and shape them to the magic that we wanted. Reading of omens and portends was very important in the Aztec world. It was something that they did and concentrated on a lot. So we built a lot of that into the character classes and what they could do. So that rather than being just pure, and forgive me, I don't play Warcraft, but I have a friend who does. He always uses the word DPS. I guess that's damage per second.
Yeah.
Something like that. Instead of being more damage per second oriented, we wanted to make them to be more insightful and more like, there's one like sorcerer that can kind of briefly glimpse into the future and get like little bits and pieces of information that they can use. So we thought that drawing from those different inspirations than what's been done before gave us a lot more avenues to explore in creating the mechanics. I mean, the mechanics, pretty much conform to the 5e and the Pathfinder. I'm a very big stickler on crunch. I don't like crunch that's very vague, ambiguous. My motto is if every character would want this, I did it wrong because it's broken.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Being able to draw from those different sources and draw from different inspirations and ideas, I think really helped us mechanically because we weren't falling into the same character X gets +1 bonus to hit instead of character X gets 1 extra spell per level or that kind of thing. It was more of character X gets to do this different cool ability instead.
This is really cool. Yeah, I'm excited that you came on to talk about this. I think I'm going to go back it.
Yeah, I know. I've been totally sold by this conversation. And before we jump into the topic, let's just reiterate: this is the Tehuatl Kickstarter. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly, but it's spelled Tetuatl if you're Googling it. If you Google Frog God Kickstarter, you'll see information about this, and at the Frog God site for sure. Right? Anything else that you want to? Any other sites or anything like that you want to plug real quick for people that want to learn more about this?
Yeah, it's actually, I have to correct you on the spelling. It's Tehuatl.
See?
T-E-T. Yeah.
I got the pronunciation right, and then I botched
the pronunciation right, the spelling wrong. So that's okay, no problem. It's Tehuatl. You can find us on our socials. Our website is froggodgames.com. That's primarily the store. So I will warn you, if you're looking for information on Tehuatl, you're probably not going to find a lot on that because that's primarily the storefront for the company. Mm-hmm. Our most active social media is probably Facebook. So like the Frog God Games page, we'll keep you updated on Tehuatl. You can follow me personally. I'm Tom Knauss 52 at Facebook. I have a little Nandor with a little pink doll as my profile. If you're into what we do in the shadows, favorite shows.
It's great.
That's fantastic.
We also have a heavy Discord presence, so we have a Frog God Games Discord server, and you can reach us there. So you can post there. Tehuatl actually now has its own channel on the Frog God page. So any information you want to learn about Tehuatl, anything you want to say about it, any comments, feel free to stop by and we'll address them as we can. And again, Kickstarter right now, it's Lost Lands Tehuatl. You should be able to search it and find it there, and hopefully pledge and. Get what we think is a really amazing product.
Yeah.
So, hey, shall we jump into our the topic at hand? We have to start. So, earlier in the show, Tom was holding up. We were talking about our game books, and Tom was holding up his mint-looking condition of Delta Green Countdown. Is that right?
That's correct.
So, is that your prize RPG possession?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. It's I bought it. I'm a huge Cthulhu fan too. I love GMing Cthulhu. I love playing Cthulhu. Hopefully, I'll be able to write Cthulhu soon.
Oh, fantastic!
Oh, nice.
And I remember when Pagan Publishing first came out, and I saw that book, and I'm like, I really want. I see it's coming out. I ordered it, and I got it right away, like in the first batch. And it just sits on my shelf. I've never honestly used it.
Yeah.
I've read through it. I mean, it's like I haven't done that, but it's just kind of like my baby up there. Yeah. I'm not a huge collector. I don't have a lot of the. I had all the first E stuff. I have probably all the second E stuff. Where it is, I couldn't tell you right now. But that's the only really quote unquote collectible RPG item I have right now.
We should probably start by all admitting like what percentage of our shelf we've never actually run. And I would say mine's for like 75%. But if I'm truthful, probably 90%. Yeah. What about you, Andy? Yeah.
Oh boy, This is probably a shameful thing. But yeah, maybe for me, the stuff I've run, let's bump it down to like 65%.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't have a problem. It's not a problem. It's
no.
Yeah. Do you keep your collection kind of slimmed down just to what you use, or do you have a bunch of stuff that is gathering dust?
Yeah, I have to say I have stuff that gathers dust. I do support a lot of Kickstarters for a lot of my friends and other people in the industry, and I do look through them, but have I actually been able to play them? Probably not. So yeah. I would say it's more along Chris's line, probably about 80% probably I haven't actually played.
I have this problem where when game lines are ended or replaced by a new edition, there's like this window of time when everybody is ditching their books from the previous edition, and I will go scoop up a whole ton of those. There's this window of time. If you wait too long, they start becoming collectible again, and the prices skyrocket. But there's this like golden window, like where you can swoop in and pick up stuff for cheap. So I'm afraid that accounts for an awful lot of the stuff clogging up my bookshelves at the moment. Now, we don't have to talk just about like rare game books here, but Chris, you are newer to the hobby. I'm an oldie who's been gaming since the early first edition days. I've over the years I've accumulated some old books that are now a little bit more valuable and stuff like that. But I'm curious, as someone kind of who's come into the hobby in the last 5 years, what do you think of these expensive or rare or collectible books? Do you have any that you have your eye on, or is that just, or are you content with what is being produced right now?
I'm mostly content. What's interesting is, so like when I came into the hobby, right, PDFs were an established thing. My collection is split amongst digital and print. This is very different from like, say, my video game collection, which a lot of that, like the digital stuff makes me sad. I'd rather have, the physical editions and things like that. Yeah. So, I mean, like the books that I have on the shelf, I treat them more as reference material at this point. Ask me in 20 years, it's like all my and stuff like, oh, that's, I have to keep that forever, right? That's my, that's my, the game that I started with, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's, I don't really own too much stuff that I would consider rare, or that I'd even say that is going to be rare at some point in the future. So it all just sort of sits on a shelf, right? Like it's another collection of books in my collection that I'll pull off as I need to. I say all that, but then now I remember that I do have like a old Dungeon Master's guide that I picked up at a used bookstore that I love. So
okay, yeah. So there you go. When you guys run games, what do you have actually at the table? What books will we find at your GMing seat? Tom, do you want to start?
I go pretty light, so it's going to be usually just whatever book I'm running for an adventure, a player's guide, a DM's guide, and a monster guide, usually. That's pretty much it. I go streamline. I don't like to bring a ton of books or resources, because I figure that I usually do bring my Chromebook. So if I really desperately need to search something that's on either, OGL, I can just click it really quick instead of drag down, 20 books from my office. So that's pretty much my approach to it.
Do your players all have books on the table too, or do you?
Yeah, they pretty much do. Yeah.
Yeah, when I'm running stuff, I will mostly have the just whatever the adventure module, whatever the notes are for that. I'll often bring other books, but I rarely reference them. To me, it's more important to sort of keep things moving and getting things exactly right. Like sometimes like players will have more books out on the table than I do, and I'm fine with that. But
Yeah. Yeah, something similar. Well, usually I'm the only one really with the rule books, to be honest. And maybe there will be like one person has the rules, but typically I invested in like, the $60 hardcover covers, and everybody else just uses them at the table as needed. But kind of following up on that, I was wondering, like the topic of game books as physical artifacts that you use in play is an interesting one to me, because I feel like in the last decade or so, you've seen more game books produced that seem intentionally designed to be useful at the table, not just as like a reference that you read before while you're preparing your game. So like a really simple example is there are more game books out there right now that use like the margin space in the book to like provide cross references, key terms or phrases, that sort of thing. That's a really simple example. And Tom, you kind of bring a publisher's perspective to this. What delights you when you discover it in a game book? Like what delights you because it will make your actual physical job of running the game a little easier? Let me start by sharing one of mine. I love it when I can, this will sound dopey, but I love it when I can lay a game book flat with like both of the covers on the table, like flopped open, and it sits open at the page I want. And it sounds like a really petty, dumb thing, but like there's a large number of books that just don't do that for whatever reason, either because the spine makes a scary noise when you do that, or a lot of stuff like with some print on demand stuff, just I don't know the specifics of binding, but there's ways you can bind books that make that possible and ways that don't. And I won't not buy a book because it won't lay flat, but I'm always like, I get a smile on my face when I realize, aha, I can plop this down in front of me with it just laying open to whatever page I need. So do you guys have any like little things like that you look for?
For me, art is so important. So if there's something where I can show a player a picture of what it looks like or what the artist's vision looked like, rather than me reading a description of it, I think that tends to capture their attention more than me, reading 8 to 10 lines of box text to describe what this monster looks like or what this room looks like or whatever. Yeah. And from a publisher's perspective, I'll be honest, the biggest seller, I've been in booths for, I don't even know how many years, 20 years. The biggest seller is art by far. I mean, the customer who comes to the booth and looks at a book, the first thing they look at, as the old saying goes, you can't judge a book by its cover. Well, they judge the book by its cover.
Yeah.
So if the cover art sucks, they will simply put it down. If the cover art attracts their attention, they'll look at it, and then they'll leaf through it. Now, obviously, unless they attended a speed reading course, they're not speed reading a 500-page book in the 10 minutes they're standing in the booth. They're flipping through it, looking at the art, looking at the maps, looking at the cartography. And those are the things from a publishing perspective that attract the eyes and bring customers in. Because, again, nobody's going to pre-read the book before they buy it. They're going to, glance through it, see the art, see if it captures their attention, and if it does, they'll buy it. If it doesn't, they'll put it down.
It's interesting to have that confirmed, because if you go online, and I realize just going online to talk about anything is probably just a mistake right there, but you do see people saying, oh, I don't want all this fancy art, I just want more content or something like that. And I always read that and I'm always like, first of all, do you really think that? Like, do you truly want a book that's just like a big wall of text on every page? And secondly, I just don't think that's how most people operate. Anyway, interesting to hear that confirmed from the publisher perspective.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a stable of artists that have worked on a lot of Frog God games?
We have a great art director, Casey Christopherson, who does a lot of writing for Frog God and now has stepped into the shoes of being the art director. He teaches art in high school, so he actually recruits some of his students as artists. So we do have pretty much let's call it a short list of artists for us. So I'll rattle off some of the names. Adrian Linderos, Colin Chan, Santa Norvaset, Hector Rodriguez, Julio Carvalho. Those are some of the artists we tab right away for any project we have. We can go beyond that if we need to. There's several others. I just saw one of my friends, Alice, is having a book coming out. Daughter of the Moon God, I believe is the name of it. And she had a cover. I was just like, whoa, this cover is amazing. Who did it? And she threw a new name at me. I'm like, oh, wow, this is incredible. I'm amazed by it. But we do have a core group of artists who do work for us. And, occasionally we'll bring somebody new in or, tap somebody who who worked for us in the past, but isn't available often, who can do it. So it's usually a pretty stable crew.
Can you guys think of any game books or products that the art won you over pretty much yourself?
One of the ones that has some amazing art in it for us is Sword of Air was one of our first color books. And Sword of Air has some amazing maps and amazing color. Teagle Manor is another one. We redid the old Judges Guild book a while ago. And that also is renowned for its cartography. Alyssa Faden, if you're not familiar with her, is an amazing cartographer. And she did the cartography in that book. And the maps are just simply stunning. I mean, the detail, the precision that they're done with, it's just, wow. We actually had a full-length tapestry that measured about 8 feet by 12 feet of her map for Teagle Manor at a convention. Oh. Literally rolled out on the floor.
Oh, that's cool.
Like looking at it, like going through it, it was incredible.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
How about you, Chris? Have you been swayed by a piece of art?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm a sucker. The one that just jumped to mind immediately is Mothership.
Yeah,
it's
I was thinking that too.
That Mothership RPG. Just something about it, just like really minimalist. It grabbed me enough when people were talking about it that I went out immediately and bought a copy. So just like I needed to have it on the shelf. I want to play it too, right? At some point. But it's like, something like that can just grab you and really pull you in and get you kind of hyped about the setting is really fantastic. I'm planning a cyberpunk campaign that's going to happen at some point soon. So I bought a stack of books. And I mean, you talk about like a setting that's sort of right for just like cool art, right? Like just flipping through those books is super fun because you're just like, you're seeing all this stuff like, oh, that's awesome. Like it would be really fun to encounter that thing, in the game. And I find that that's like exactly what you're saying, Tom. Like, it's like you see that and you're like, okay, that makes more sense than me talking about this for 10 minutes. Like, just look at this picture. Yeah. And that's what we're going for here. Yeah.
Like Cyberpunk, that's a good example of a setting where it's just, it looks like this, and holding up a picture is way better than trying to just blab on for a paragraph about the cool cyberpunk character you're faced with, right?
Yeah.
For me, the Dungeon Crawl Classics, when it first came out, and its use of that, I forget the main artist's name, but if you've seen it, it has that really incredibly compelling old school looking art. It's old school, but it's not just aping, AD&D first edition art. It's doing something interesting with its aesthetic, and especially flipping through those modules. It's almost impossible for me to not buy one of those modules when I flip through because the maps they have in that are just, especially when they came out like a decade or so ago. I just never seen any maps like that instead of doing the standard, like we're going to create like a satellite photo looking down from above sort of picture. Dungeon Crawl Classics has these incredibly stylized, like quirky maps that aren't set exactly to scale or anything like that. And obviously that won't work for every game, but that completely bowled me over when I first saw the art for that one. So anyway, sorry about the big art tangent, but
no, it's a big part of game books. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm wondering, so something that I found myself doing more recently is like photocopying parts of books, for use at the table. I think partly because, like, going back to what you were saying, Andy, about some books just don't lay flat. Like it's easier sometimes just have part of the book. So I'm wondering, do y'all ever do that where you'll just like kind of come with maybe only notes and that's what you're primarily referencing, or are you always using the game book whenever you have it?
I do something similar to that. If I am using like a published adventure or something like that, I will usually not have that like adventure book open in front of me, but rather photocopies, or if it's a PDF, like printouts of the the specific pages I'm likely to reference. So anything that has a map, I will have printed out so I can scribble all over it. And then, if there's just key and counter information, I'll make sure that that's photocopied or printed out. And that's partly to avoid having to flip through the book. I think there's just something a little bit momentum killing anytime the GM has to pause and, flip their way through a book to get to information.
When I usually run something, it's something I wrote. So it's in my head. So I've actually, my famous story is I actually ran a convention game on a Post-it that I wrote on a Post-it note.
Nice.
Ran the entire game, and nobody knew the difference. They couldn't tell.
Yeah.
So it was just all my head. I'd done it already. So I'm like, all right, I'll just write this note down, and I made it up as I went along, and people were like, oh, wow, it's really cool. I'm like, yeah, I totally made that up. I had no idea.
That's fantastic.
I mean, since you are, a writer, you've been doing this for a while, can you sort of just improv a session or a campaign at the drop of a hat, or do you like having something written down?
It depends on how motivated I am. I'll be honest. If I'm really motivated to run it, I can do it at the drop of a hat. If I'm kind of like, I'm not feeling it today, I kind of need something. So it really depends. If I'm doing a con game, it's a little more free flowing for a con game because I'm not as concerned with I'm really concerned with either playtesting things or just introducing players to something, as opposed to a campaign game where it's going to have long-term consequences of what I do, as opposed to a campaign game. I mean, a convention game that's going to be 4 hours, and I probably won't see you again for the rest of my life. So
right.
Do you guys? This is I guess a bit of a silly question, but a couple of episodes ago, I shocked Chris and maybe another guest, I think, by saying that I had my son and my daughter I let them color in my game books. I'm just curious, has that brought up a little bit of a discussion about whether you baby your game books or preserve them, or are you a throw it in the backpack, scribble in the margins, underline stuff type of person? I'm curious what kind of GM are you? Is your copy of the Player's Handbook or whatever, is it battered and torn and full of highlights?
It's on the second one.
Yeah. Chris, what about you? You were visibly flinching when I described that. Are you more of a take care of it?
I think it's like if I do the damage, it's okay. But if someone else were to do the damage, it's like, what are you doing to my books? Right. So everything is like dog-eared, right? I've got underlines and random stuff. I mean, things like that. But I mean, like handing it to my daughter to just let her color something in there, I would just be hovering over her and be like, no, like let's put a piece of paper.
I did have to stop my son from using crayons because it was getting the pages all like waxy and gross. So I was like, dude, you gotta stick with colored pencils. Sorry, bud.
Yeah. Gotta have some boundaries. It sounds like none of us really have like a sealed climate controlled storage facility for our game books, anything like that. Do you know anyone is there a book out there that if you acquired it, that would go in like the Mylar case?
In the publishing industry, one of the most enjoyable events when you go to a convention is to go to the auction.
Okay.
Because those are the serious people who have the serious collections. I mean, they will drop. I've seen them drop $5,000 to $10,000 on a brown box or a rare, TSR piece. And I've heard that their collections I've heard of collections that are in the millions of dollars.
Oh my God.
Just simply rare stuff. I have nothing in that rarefied air. So, I mean, if I were to acquire it, every now and then I think about spending that kind of money on something. I'm like, what am I going to do with it? Where am I going to put it? I don't have that kind of storage facility for it,
Yeah, I talked to this guy one time who he was at like a convention or something, and he was selling knives, like of all things. And I was just talking with him about it, and he said something that's like really stuck with me. He's like, you can't be both a collector and a salesperson of an item, right? Like there's this very like different mentality that it takes to be a collector of something versus someone who just like uses it or sells it, right? Like it's just like a very, very different sort of mentality. Yeah, I think I would feel weird about having something that you're not allowed to touch.
Yeah, I don't have anything that will pay for my kids' college or anything like that. I have some older books that I think I probably should have, not the like hermetically sealed, vault, but I probably should have invested in some sort of better storage for them. I think at this point, I mean, I probably still should, but it's just low on like the budget priority right now. But I probably should get down there before too much time goes by. But what's weird and unpleasant about having like kind of rare books is that, like you feel like you can't use them. I even have this sometimes when a book isn't all that rare, but just if it's out of print and it will be difficult, I know it would be like a little difficult to get a copy of it again. I'm sad to say it sometimes makes me think, I better not like really run that, because like the book, it'll just inevitably get degraded in the course of hauling it around and running games. And I don't like that feeling. And so that's actually an incentive to me that helps me avoid the temptation to spend major bucks on like rare stuff, because I don't know, I wouldn't feel able to use it, and I don't have the equipment to preserve it, and I don't even have the energy to like eBay this, this stuff. So
what I'm hearing is I should come over and just like rip one page out of all of your books, just so you can get over that.
There has been times when I was younger, I was very, I don't want to use medical terms for it flippantly or whatever, but I cared to an extreme extent for like the physical shape of my books. So if it got a dent in the corner, that I found that just psychically upsetting to me. And when it was always a relief to me when a book would get damaged that I was trying to baby, because then I could give myself permission to just like not worry about it at all anymore. I now have permission to just toss the sucker around and like rip through it and not care that the binding is coming loose and stuff. So I don't know. Sometimes I kind of want to go to my kids and I'm like, hey, when I'm not looking, can you just shove this book off of the bookshelf and give it a big dent so that it's broken goods and I can freely use it without worrying about it. Anyway, sorry, I'm probably revealing more of my psychological problems as appropriate a gaming podcast.
No, this is good. Yeah, well, we should wrap it up here. We've been going for a little bit. This was really good. Tom, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. This was fantastic to hear about the Kickstarter and hear a little bit about game books and how you treat them.
No, it was my pleasure.
Yeah. So I guess let's see. One last time, if you could just let us know where can people find you and find information about the Kickstarter and Frog God games.
You can go to our Facebook page, froggodgames.com, or you can, actually, our Facebook page wouldn't be Frog God Games. It would just .com. It would just be Frog God Games. Duh. You could find me on the socials, Facebook, Tom Knauss 52. Also at our Discord server, Frog God Games, and you could reach us there. And we do have Instagram, but it's mostly for posting pictures. There's really no intercourse or interaction there. So
yeah, cool,
excellent. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on, and I would say good luck on your Kickstarter, but you're already having fantastic luck. I hope that you knock out all those stretch goals. Yeah, I can't wait to see how far that goes.
Yep, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Cool. All right, well, I've been Chris Salzman.
I've been Andy Rao.
Remember, if your players are having fun, you're a great GM.